The low jazz pulsed through the gilded haze of La Verità, thrumming against my skin like a warning I ignored. Calluses burned on my palms as I wove through the elite crowd, studying a tray of crystal glasses that chimed with every precise dodge. My arches throbbed in the scuffed black pumps I'd polished to hide the wear, the only ones that passed for this glittering snake pit. VIP booth. Wants refills. The head bartender snapped as I neared the marble counter, eyes glued to his shaker. I gave a tight nod he wouldn't catch and set the tray down with a muted clink. The air thickened with aged scotch and designer scents, dizzying in its excess. 3 more hours until close. 3 more hours of painted-on charm and evading entitled grabs. You're new here. The words sliced the din, velvet and sharp. I pivoted to face a man behind the bar, not our usual mixologist who'd vanished into the stockroom. This one was younger, maybe 32, with raven hair tousled just enough to look effortless, a face carved for sin under the golden spots. Sleeves shoved to his elbows, exposed forearms etched with swirling ink, like shadows coiling over steel. But his eyes, storm-dark, locked on mine, pinned me with a gaze that stripped away the room's noise. Started tonight, I shot back, forcing steadiness even as my pulse stuttered. Still figuring out the chaos. His mouth twitched in a half-smile that never warmed those depths. You'll manage, he murmured, pouring with lethal grace, every motion controlled and commanding. Name? Edith, I said, tracking the glide of his fingers. Edith Blake. Edith, he echoed, savoring it like a secret. He offered nothing back. I should have moved on. Should have checked the booths, but an invisible thread held me, mesmerized by his poise. Maybe it was how the staff skirted him like currents around a reef, or the way security tensed at his subtle nod. Your VIPs are thirsty, he said at last, sliding the final pour onto my tray. Our knuckles grazed, heat flared up my arm, forbidden and alive. His touch lingered, deliberate. I muttered thanks and fled, his stare searing between my shoulder blades. The shift blurred into a haze of orders and hollow banter. I stole glances at him through the night, always observing, always that unflinching intensity. By closing, intrigue won out. Who's the stand-in behind the bar? I whispered to Casey, the veteran server who'd seen too much. She glanced over, color draining. What's stand-in? The one with the tattoos. Priceless watch. Casey's eyes widened faintly. That's no server, Edith. That's... She clamped shut, shaking her head. Steer clear. Some shadows in here swallow you whole. Before I could dig, she darted to a table of suited wolves. I whipped back to the bar, but the enigma had melted away. By 2 a.m., my body screamed, tips counted in the dim staff room, a pitiful stack that wouldn't touch this month's rent, let alone my brother's piling hospital tabs. The Manhattan chill slapped me outside, biting through my threadbare coat as I shrugged it on. Wished I'd grabbed the warmer one from home. The avenues lay hushed at this hour, neon bleeding into puddles under amber lamps. Last train gone meant hoofing 15 blocks through the fringes. I'd barely cleared the block when echoes trailed me, heavy, insistent. Adrenaline spiked. I lengthened my stride, bag clutched like a shield. This city devoured the lone at night, especially women in uniforms. The steps closed in. Hey, slow down. I knew that slur. Leonard Pike, the tech titan regular, drowning in liquor and ego. He'd been pawing all evening, slipping bills like bait I'd ignored. Shift's over, Leonard. Call it a night. I tossed back, not breaking pace.
Small, one-night gap.
His voice thickened, reeking of bourbon, even at a distance. I pushed faster, but his fingers clamped my wrist, yanking me around. Playing coy? I love the chase. Terror coiled tight. The street emptied, no witnesses for a cry. His hold bruised as I twisted, calculating a knee or scream. When beams flooded us. A obsidian sedan gliding to the curb, engine a predatory whisper. The back door eased open, a silhouette commanding from the gloom. Problem. That voice again, the server who wasn't. Leonard's grasp faltered as he squinted, irked.
But out, buddy.
Me and the lady. Get in, Edith. Not a request, a velvet decree that propelled me forward before thought caught up. Hey, Leonard lunged, but a hulking shadow unfolded from the front. Buzz cut, silent as death. He dropped the drunk to his knees in a blur, no sound but a choked gasp. Get in. Softer now, laced with promise. I paused at the threshold, rain needling my skin, peering into the plush abyss. Logic howled to bolt. Stranger danger in a mobster's ride was headline fodder. I can hail a cab. I tried, voice thin. It's the dead of night in a predator's playground, and a persistent fool's on your tail, he countered, calm as midnight. I'm ensuring you arrive intact. Behind, Leonard groaned under the guard's boot. Downpour soaked me through. Reluctantly, I sank into buttery leather, the door sealing with finality. The cabin enveloped in cedar and spice, intoxicating. Up close, he was devastating, cheekbones like blades, jaw shadowed with intent, black shirt hugging a frame built for dominance. Tailored perfection that screamed fortunes I couldn't fathom. Thanks, I managed, awkward in the luxury. But I had it. A flicker of amusement ghosted his lips. No doubt, Edith Blake. My full name on his tongue sent tremors, thrilling, treacherous. I'd never given the Blake. You didn't say yours, I pressed, steadying my breath. Or why the bar disguise? I disguised nothing. You presumed. His stare dissected, peeling layers. Names carry weight. Mine more than most. The evasion should have alarmed, but fatigue blurred edges. Oddly, peril felt distant in his orbit. Address? I rattled off my walk-up in the bowels of Brooklyn, bracing for judgment. He merely nodded, murmuring to the driver via intercom. Silence stretched then. You make a habit of rescuing staff, mister? He leaned fractionally closer.
John.
And no. Then why me? Those eyes bored in, unraveling. You echo a ghost. Before clarification, we halted outside my crumbling stoop. Faded brick, barred windows screaming neglect. Shame burned as I pictured his view. Thank you again. I hurried, hand on the latch. Hold. He produced a card, stark ivory, a lone embossed number. For when unpredictability strikes. I took it warily. Why would I? Because debts come due, Edith Blake, and favors bind. Knuckles brushed, spark ignited, coiling heat. I pocketed it, fled into the storm. Not until triple locked inside, breath fogging the dim hall, did it hit. I hadn't mentioned Leonard's pursuit tonight. Yet he'd materialized precisely, as if the shadows reported to him alone. Morning crashed with fists on wood, groggy. I shuffled in a faded robe, squinting through the peephole at my landlord's scowl. Blake, open up. I cracked the door. It's barely 8.
Rent. Now.
You're 3 months deep, and mercy's expired. Dread plunged. Payday's Friday. I can cover half, the rest. Full or eviction by noon. His sneer cut. Fight it in court. With what lawyer? The slam echoed, leaving me adrift in the cramped space.
Panique Claude, $8,000 impossible.
I'd been scraping since the gallery folded, blackballed after exposing the owner's fraud. And my brother's treatments, the bills stacked like indictments, each one a noose tightening. Each one a noose tightening. If only I'd known how one swing would unravel it all, or bind me to the devil in black. You just felt the spark. Don't let it die. Subscribe now to know what happens next. Like, comment, share, tell us. Would you have gotten in the car? The landlord's words still ricocheted inside my skull when the first sliver of daylight clawed through the cracked blinds. I hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, the scene played on a vicious loop. Leonard Pike's meaty fingers on my wrist, the golden lounge light strobing, my palms slicing through air and landing. Crack. On the wrong cheek. Not the drunk. The other one. The man who'd poured my drinks with the calm of a surgeon and the eyes of a wolf. I jolted awake on the sagging couch, heart hammering against ribs that still felt the phantom echo of that slap. My hand throbbed, as if the impact had bruised me instead of him. A fist pounded the door again, 3 sharp raps, polite but unyielding. Not the landlord's sloppy banging. Edith Blake. A baritone, clipped, expensive. I dragged myself up, robe cinched tight, and peered through the peephole. 2 men in charcoal suits filled the hallway like bookends. Sunglasses at 8 a.m. One held a black envelope the size of a playing card. The other scanned the corridor as if my peeling wallpaper might sprout assassins. I cracked the chain.
I'm Blake.
The envelope slid through the gap. Heavy paper, wax seal the color of dried blood. A single letter pressed into it. M. Delivery for you, ma'am. Be prompt. They were gone before I could ask questions, footsteps swallowed by the stairwell. Inside the envelope, thick cardstock gold ink. Mr. John Moretti requests the pleasure of your company.
Tonight.
8 o'clock.
La Verità, private dining room, asterisco asterisco.
Come alone. No RSVP line. No phone number. Just the crest and his name, John Moretti, printed like a verdict. I stood frozen until the wax seal cracked under my thumb. The pieces fluttered to the linoleum like black snow. Casey answered on the 3rd ring, voice hoarse from last night's shift. Edith? It's my day off. I slapped John Moretti. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. Tell me you're joking. I thought he was a waiter. Leonard grabbed me, I swung, and
Jesus e dice.
A rustle, like she was sitting up in bed. People who cross him don't get second chances. They get erased. Quietly. He sent an invitation.
Dinner.
Tonight. Another beat of silence.
Go.
Apologize. Grovel if you have to. And whatever you do, don't run. He'll find you. The line went dead. I stared at the card until the letters blurred. My reflection in the toaster looked back, pale, eyes ringed violet, hair a tangle. The same woman who'd once dreamed of art galleries and quiet studios now owed $8,000 in back rent and twice that to the hospital for Timmy's chemo.
I needed the job.
I needed tonight to fix this. La Verità at noon was a ghost lounge. Chairs stacked, lights dimmed to bruised amber. The scent of citrus polish could mask last night's whiskey ghosts. Marco was behind the bar, polishing glassware with mechanical fury. He didn't look up when I approached. Schedule says I'm on at 4, I said. Schedule changed. His rags squeaked against crystal. You're off. Indefinitely. My stomach dropped. What? Orders from the top. He finally met my eyes, apology flickering. Direct instruction. Temporary suspension, Miss Blake. That's all I got. Temporary means I come back, right? Marco's shrug was answer enough. I left before the tears could fall, the black envelope burning a hole in my pocket. Back in the apartment, the stack of medical invoices had grown another inch, final notices stamped in red. Timmy's next treatment was in 9 days. Without my tips, we were dust. I showered in water that never quite got hot, scrubbed until my skin stung, as if I could wash away the night. The mirror steamed, but the dread stayed. 7:30. I stood in front of the cracked closet mirror, wearing the only dress I owned that didn't scream waitress. Black, high neck, sleeves to the elbow. Borrowed from Casey 2 Christmases ago. It fit like a lie. Elegant on the hanger, desperate on me. I pinned my hair, dabbed concealer under my eyes, and practiced the apology in the reflection. I'm sorry, Mr. Moretti. It was an accident. I mistook you for...
No.
Too defensive. Thank you for the ride home. About the slap.
Worse.
I settled on silence. Let him speak first.
Survive.
The envelope lay on the counter, like a loaded gun. I slipped it into my clutch beside the plain white card he'd given me last night, just the number, no name. My fingers brushed the raised digits, and heat flashed up my arm again, uninvited. The cab smelled of pine cleaner and old leather. The driver didn't speak when I gave the address. He just glanced in the rear view, eyes widening a fraction. La Verità After Dark was members only, and I wasn't a member. Streetlights streaked across the window as we crossed the bridge into Manhattan's glittering belly. My pulse kept time with the meter. Apologize and survive, Edith. That's all. But the words tasted like ash, because curiosity, sharp, reckless, had already sunk its teeth in. The cab rolled to a stop beneath La Veritas awning at 7:58. A liveried doorman opened the door before the driver killed the engine. Miss Blake, he murmured, as though my name had been on the list for years. I stepped onto the red carpet, heels wobbling on the marble threshold. The lounge's main floor was shuttered to the public tonight. Velvet ropes, a single gold sign. Private event. A second man in a tuxedo appeared, wordless, and led me past the familiar bar, now dark and silent, to a discreet elevator tucked behind the VIP booths. The doors closed with a whisper. My reflection stared back, wide eyes, pulse fluttering at my throat. The car climbed one floor and opened directly into the suite.
Candlelight.
That was the first thing. Not the city view glittering beyond the glass, not the table set for two with silver that caught fire in the flames, but the candles, dozens of them, tall and thin, guttering in crystal holders. The air smelled of beeswax and something darker, like smoke curled around cedar. John Moretti stood at the far end, back to me, hands clasped behind him. Black shirt, sleeves still rolled to the elbow, tattoos shifting as he turned.
Edith.
My name in his mouth sounded like a verdict and a caress. Right on time. He moved with unhurried grace, pulling out my chair. The scrape of wood on parquet was the only sound.
Isette.
My knees barely fit beneath the linen. Wine. He lifted a bottle, something French, label too elegant to pronounce. I nodded. The crystal stem trembled in my grip when he poured. He took the opposite seat, candlelight carving shadows beneath his cheekbones. Up close, the beauty was brutal, the kind that made you forget how to blink. To accidents, he said, raising his glass. I clinked mine against his because refusal felt like stepping off a cliff. The wine was velvet and iron, black cherries, a bite of tannin. You're not angry, I blurted. The words scraped out before I could cage them. Should I be? His voice stayed soft, almost amused. You drew blood with that slap. A single drop. He touched the faint red line high on his cheekbone, the only proof. I've had worse from men who meant it. Heat flooded my face. I thought you were. A waiter.
Yes.
I gathered. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, fingers steepled. Tell me, Edith Blake, what does a woman who mistakes a wolf for a server dream about when the lights go out? The question landed between us like a live wire. I swallowed. Paying rent. Keeping my brother breathing. Not being here. Honesty tasted reckless. It spilled anyway. His gaze flicked to my left hand, bare, nails chewed, and back to my eyes. The brother in St. Luke's. Leukemia. Stage 3. Treatment costs. He named the exact figure on the latest invoice, down to the cent. My glass froze halfway to my lips. How? I make it my business to know what I own. He said it mildly, as if discussing the weather either. And tonight you interest me. The first course arrived, silent servers in white gloves, plates sliding onto chargers like cards in a rigged deck. Seared scallop, yuzu foam, microgreens that cost more than my weekly tips. I couldn't taste it. He ate with precision, watching me. You could have fired me, I said. Or worse. I considered it. He set down his fork. The tines rang softly. Then I remembered no one has touched me in 6 years. Not a handshake. Not a brush in a crowd. Bodyguards see to that. His smile curved, slow and lethal. You slipped through the net. That makes you singular. Singular, I echoed. The word tasted like a brand. Tell me about the gallery, he continued, conversational, as if he hadn't just dismantled my privacy. The one that closed after you reported the owner for fraud. You were 24. Promising talent. Blacklisted within a week. I laughed, sharp, incredulous. You ran a background check between the salad and the entree? I ran it before you left the lounge last night. He refilled my glass, though I'd barely sipped. Knowledge is currency, Edith. I trade in it. The chess match began. Every question he asked peeled another layer. Favorite painter, Klimt. Worst foster home, the one with the padlocked fridge. The Scar on My Knee, by Crash, age 9. I answered because silence felt like losing, because the way he listened, head tilted, eyes unblinking, made the room shrink until only the candle between us existed. And because every answer he gave in return was a breadcrumb. He hated oysters. His mother sang Italian lullabies off-key. He'd killed his first man at 17. The last confession slipped out like the others, casual, while he carved his fillet. I froze, fork suspended. He noticed. Does that frighten you? Yes. Good. He dabbed his mouth with linen. Fear keeps the blood honest. Dessert was a single dark chocolate sphere that melted under warm caramel, revealing passion fruit curd. He fed me a bite from his own spoon. The intimacy should have repulsed me. Instead, heat coiled low in my stomach. I set the spoon down with shaking fingers. Why the dinner, John? Because apologies are best served rare. He leaned in. Candlelight licked the hollow beneath his eye. And because I wanted to watch you decide whether to run or reach for the knife under the napkin. I glanced down. There was no knife. Only the butter blade, harmless. His laugh was low, approving. See? Already learning the board. The check never came. The servers vanished. The elevator doors opened at a touch of his phone. He walked me to them, hand hovering at the small of my back, never touching, but the heat radiated through silk. At the threshold, I turned. I still don't understand what you want from me. Want is a small word. His gaze traced my mouth. I collect rare things, Edith. You're the first in a long while. The doors began to close. I stepped inside, pulse roaring in my ears. His final words followed me down the shaft, soft as a promise. Brave little waitress. The elevator descended. I caught my reflection again. Lips swollen from nervous biting, pupils blown wide. Half terrified, half electrified. The city lights below looked suddenly breakable. The elevator spat me onto the sidewalk at 11:07. The city had traded its golden lounge pulse for a colder rhythm, sirens dopplering in the distance, wind knifing between buildings. My borrowed dress felt paper-thin against the November bite. I walked fast, heels clicking a frantic Morse code on the pavement. 15 blocks to the subway. Then the long ride to Brooklyn. I could still taste the caramel on my tongue, still feel the ghost of his gaze mapping every inch of me. I was 3 blocks from La Verità when the footsteps started. Not the casual scuff of a late-night commuter. These were deliberate, measured, keeping perfect distance. I didn't look back. Looking back gives them power. Instead, I lengthened my stride, clutching my purse like a shield. The street narrowed into a canyon of brick and shadow. A single street lamp flickered overhead, strobing sickly yellow. My breath plumed white. The footsteps accelerated. I spun into the alley that cut to the next avenue. Faster route. Stupid move. The walls closed in, graffiti bleeding under dripping fire escapes. A silhouette filled the mouth behind me. Tall, hooded, hands in pockets. Hey! His voice was gravel and liquor. Slow down, sweetheart. I ran. Heels skidded on wet asphalt. I kicked them off, barefoot on freezing grit. My pulse hammered so loud I almost missed the low growl of an engine. Headlights washed the alley white. A black sedan nosed in, blocking the pursuer's path. 2 doors opened in unison. The hooded man froze as silhouettes unfolded, broad, silent, moving like smoke given muscle. 1 second he was reaching, the next he was on his knees, a muffled grunt swallowed by the night. I backed against the wall, glass shards biting my soles. The rear window descended with a whisper. John's face in the half-light, unreadable. Get in. I should have refused. Should have screamed for a cop, a witness, anyone. Instead, my legs carried me forward, drawn by the same current that had pulled me into the elevator hours earlier. The door shut behind me with the finality of a vault. The car smelled of leather and cedar, his scent. He didn't speak as we glided through the city, only watched me in the reflection of the partition glass. My bare feet curled against the carpet. Blood dotted the mat from a cut I couldn't feel. At my building, he finally broke the silence. You'll want shoes. One of the shadows in the front produced my discarded heels from a plastic bag, spotless. I fled upstairs without a word. Morning came gray and merciless. I woke to the phone buzzing on the milk crate I used as a nightstand. Unknown number. I answered anyway. You're under my protection now. John's voice, smooth as the wine I'd barely tasted. I didn't ask for it. My own voice cracked like thin ice. Asking is irrelevant. A pause, the soft click of a lighter. Safety isn't a request, Edith. It's a decision I made for you. The line went dead. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. By noon, the first miracle arrived. The landlord, Mr. Finch, perpetual scowl and onion breath, knocked once, timid. Miss Blake? Your balance is settled. All of it. Paid in full through next year. I opened the door wider. By who? He shrugged, already backing away. Cashier's check. No name. Just don't ask questions, yeah. The hospital called an hour later. Your brother's account shows a zero balance. The billing clerk chirped, confused. Anonymous donor. Quite generous. I sat on the kitchen floor amid unopened envelopes and felt the walls tilt. The bouquet came at dusk. Black roses, velvet petals, thorns snipped clean. Delivered by a boy no older than 16 who vanished before I could tip him. No card. Only a single ivory tag tied with crimson ribbon. One word in John's elegant script, safe. I carried the vase to the sink, filled it with water I didn't want to waste, then thought better and dumped the roses into the trash. The tag I held over the stove's blue flame. It curled, blackened, turned to ash that drifted like dirty snow. My fingers shook so hard the lighter clattered to the linoleum. Night pressed against the windows. I paced the 3 rooms that had once felt like refuge, now a dollhouse under glass. Every creak of the radiator sounded like a footstep. Every shadow in the hallway stretched too long. At 2:13 a.m., I couldn't stand it anymore. I threw on jeans and a hoodie, grabbed my keys, and stepped into the corridor. The building was asleep. Even the drunk on 3B had passed out. Outside, the street was empty except for the sodium glow and the low rumble of an idling engine. Across the road, half hidden beneath a dying maple, sat the black sedan.
Tinted windows, no plats visible.
A faint red pulsed inside. Cigarette, maybe, or the glow of a phone. I stood on the stoop, wind whipping my hair across my face, and stared at it. The driver's window cracked 2 inches. A gloved hand lifted in a lazy salute. Fear tasted metallic on my tongue, but beneath it, God help me, something warmer flickered. I was a fly in amber, and the amber was warm. The cage door just clicked shut. Will Edith pick the lock, or learn to love the bars? Click the subscribe button to find out. The black sedan was still there at dawn, a silent sentinel under the skeletal maple. I watched it from behind the blinds until the engine turned over and it melted into traffic. Only then did I exhale. 3 days of silence followed. No calls.
No roses. No miracles.
Just the weight of knowing the quiet wasn't absence. It was calculation. On the 4th morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unsaved number.
Asterisco asterisco la verità.
11 a.m. We have a proposition. Asterisk asterisk. Nothing else. No signature needed. I almost deleted it. Instead, I showered, pulled on the least worn jeans I owned, and took the subway into Manhattan. The lounge looked naked in daylight, mirrors dulled, velvet seats the color of old bruises. John waited in the private dining room where we'd eaten. Today the candles were gone. Sunlight knifed through the windows and laid everything bare. He wore charcoal, sleeves rolled high, tattoos stark against skin. A single folder lay on the table between 2 espresso cups. You're late, he said, but his mouth curved like he'd expected it. Traffic. I stayed by the door. What's the proposition? He nudged the folder forward. Private coordinator. My VIP events. Galas, private auctions, the parties that don't make the society pages. You manage guest lists, vendors, security liaisons. Triple your current salary.
Benefits.
Discretion clause. I laughed short, incredulous. You suspended me to hire me? I suspended you to clear the board. He sipped his espresso, eyes never leaving mine. La Verità is one piece of a larger machine. I need someone who sees through masks. You proved you can. The number on the contract blurred. Triple pay meant Timmy's next round of chemo, a real apartment, maybe even paint under my nails again. I don't work for criminals, I said. The words tasted like a lie I wanted to believe. You already do. He set the cup down with a porcelain click. Every bottle you pour, every tip you pocket, this lounge is mine. The difference is now you'd be on the books. Protected. Visible. Pressure coiled in my chest. Financial gravity. Emotional undertow. Casey had stopped answering texts. Marco avoided my eyes when I picked up my last check. Even the hospital clerk had started sentences with, regarding the anonymous donor. I signed. The pen scratched like a confession. The first week was a blur of spreadsheets and shadowed hallways. John's world operated in velvet corridors behind the lounge, offices with biometric locks, elevators that required retina scans. I learned which smiles were currency and which were threats. He was always there. Not hovering, but inevitable. A hand at my elbow guiding me through a crush of oligarchs. A murmured correction when I mispronounced a sheik's name. A takeaway container of osso buco left on my desk when I skipped lunch. Small gestures. Precise. Impossible to repay. 10 days in, the glass shattered. A charity auction after-party, crystal flutes, champagne fountains, a string quartet sawing Vivaldi into the haze. I was coordinating exits when a drunk heiress swung her purse like a mace. The strap snapped, a shard sliced across my palm. Blood welled instant and bright. I hissed, pressing the cut to my skirt. Strong fingers closed over my wrist. This way. John led me through a service door into a small office lit by a single banker's lamp. The air smelled of leather and old paper. He locked the door behind us. Seat. I obeyed the low stool by the desk. He knelt, actually knelt, unbuttoning his shirt cuff to roll it higher. The tattoos flexed as he opened a drawer, produced a first aid kit with the same calm he'd used to order my salary. This will sting. Antiseptic bit. I bit my lip harder. He worked in silence. Cleaned, pressed gauze, wrapped with efficient tenderness. His thumb brushed the inside of my wrist, pulse point, and stayed there a second too long. You flinch from pain but not from me, he murmured. I'm learning the difference. My voice came out husky. He tied off the bandage, but didn't release my hand. You're too honest for this city, Edith. It makes you dangerous. Dangerous, I echoed. The word tasted like smoke. To me, his eyes lifted. Storm dark, unguarded for the first time. Stay late tonight. I'll drive you. I should have said no. I nodded. That night, I dreamed in fragments. His fingers tracing the bandage, then higher, along my forearm, throat, the hollow beneath my ear. No fear, only heat, a low thrum of want that woke me gasping at 3 a.m., sheets twisted, skin flushed. I was still tasting the dream when the call came. I'd fallen asleep on the office couch, shoes kicked off, contract revisions spread like tarot cards. The ringtone sliced the quiet. John's voice, but stripped of velvet. Ice over steel. Told you disposal, not discussion. The river. Waits. No traces. A pause. Someone pleading on the other end, thin, frantic. End it. The line went dead. I sat up slowly. The lamp cast his shadow long across the wall as he stepped back into the office, phone sliding into his pocket. The monster and the man wearing the same face. He saw me awake, saw the knowledge in my eyes. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then he crossed the room, slow, and picked up my shoes. Knelt again, this time to slip them onto my feet like I was something fragile and priceless. Time to go, he said quietly. I let him, because the cage had begun to feel like shelter. And the key was already in his pocket. The black sedan was still there at dawn, a silent sentinel under the skeletal maple. I watched it from behind the blinds until the engine turned over and it melted into traffic. Only then did I exhale. 3 days of silence followed. No calls.
No roses. No miracles.
Just the weight of knowing the quiet wasn't absence. It was calculation. On the 4th morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unsaved number.
Asterisco asterisco la verità.
11 a.m. We have a proposition. Asterisk asterisk. Nothing else. No signature needed. I almost deleted it. Instead, I showered, pulled on the least worn jeans I owned, and took the subway into Manhattan. The lounge looked naked in daylight, mirrors dulled, velvet seats the color of old bruises. John waited in the private dining room where we'd eaten. Today the candles were gone. Sunlight knifed through the windows and laid everything bare. He wore charcoal, sleeves rolled high, tattoos stark against skin. A single folder lay on the table between 2 espresso cups. "You're late," he said, but his mouth curved like he'd expected it. Traffic. I stayed by the door. "What's the proposition?" He nudged the folder forward. "Private coordinator. My VIP events. Galas, private auctions, the parties that don't make the society pages. You manage guest lists, vendors, security liaisons. Triple your current salary.
Benefits.
Discretion clause." I laughed short, incredulous. "You suspended me to hire me?" "I suspended you to clear the board." He sipped his espresso, eyes never leaving mine. "La Verità is one piece of a larger machine. I need someone who sees through masks. You proved you can." The number on the contract blurred. Triple pay meant Timmy's next round of chemo, a real apartment, maybe even paint under my nails again. "I don't work for criminals," I said. The words tasted like a lie I wanted to believe. "You already do." He set the cup down with a porcelain click. "Every bottle you pour, every tip you pocket, this lounge is mine. The difference is now you'd be on the books. Protected. Visible." Pressure coiled in my chest, financial gravity, emotional undertow. Casey had stopped answering texts. Marco avoided my eyes when I picked up my last check. Even the hospital clerk had started sentences with, "Regarding the anonymous donor." I signed. The pen scratched like a confession. The first week was a blur of spreadsheets and shadowed hallways. John's world operated in velvet corridors behind the lounge, offices with biometric locks, elevators that required retina scans. I learned which smiles were currency and which were threats. He was always there, not hovering, but inevitable. A hand at my elbow guiding me through a crush of oligarchs. A murmured correction when I mispronounced a sheik's name. A takeaway container of osso buco left on my desk when I skipped lunch. Small gestures. Precise. Impossible to repay. 10 days in, the glass shattered. A charity auction after-party, crystal flutes, champagne fountains, a string quartet sawing Vivaldi into the haze. I was coordinating exits when a drunk heiress swung her purse like a mace. The strap snapped, a shard sliced across my palm. Blood welled instant and bright. I hissed, pressing the cut to my skirt. Strong fingers closed over my wrist. "This way." John led me through a service door into a small office lit by a single banker's lamp. The air smelled of leather and old paper. He locked the door behind us.
"Seat."
I obeyed the low stool by the desk. He actually knelt, unbuttoning his shirt cuff to roll it higher. The tattoos flexed as he opened a drawer, produced a first aid kit with the same calm he'd used to order my salary. "This will sting." Antiseptic bit. I bit my lip harder. He worked in silence, cleaned, pressed gauze, wrapped with efficient tenderness. His thumb brushed the inside of my wrist, pulse point, and stayed there a second too long. "You flinch from pain, but not from me," he murmured. "I'm learning the difference." My voice came out husky. He tied off the bandage, but didn't release my hand. "You're too honest for this city, Edith. It makes you dangerous." "Dangerous," I echoed. The word tasted like smoke. To me, his eyes lifted. Storm dark, unguarded for the first time. "Stay late tonight. I'll drive you." I should have said no. I nodded. That night, I dreamed in fragments. His fingers tracing the bandage, then higher, along my forearm, throat, the hollow beneath my ear. No fear, Only heat, a low thrum of want that woke me gasping at 3 a.m., sheets twisted, skin flushed. I was still tasting the dream when the call came. I'd fallen asleep on the office couch, shoes kicked off, contract revisions spread like tarot cards. The ringtone sliced the quiet. John's voice, but stripped of velvet. Ice over steel. Told you disposal, not discussion. The river.
Waits. No traces.
A pause. Someone pleading on the other end, thin, frantic. End it. The line went dead. I sat up slowly. The lamp cast his shadow long across the wall as he stepped back into the office, phone sliding into his pocket. The monster and the man wearing the same face. He saw me awake, saw the knowledge in my eyes. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then he crossed the room, slow, and picked up my shoes. Knelt again, this time to slip them onto my feet like I was something fragile and priceless. Time to go, he said quietly. I let him, because the cage had begun to feel like shelter, and the key was already in his pocket. The call came at 7:14 a.m., the hospital's billing department chirping like a songbird that had never seen blood. Miss Blake, your brother's remaining balance, $92,411, has been paid in full. Anonymous donor. Will mail the receipt. I stood in my kitchenette clutching a chipped mug of instant coffee, robe slipping off one shoulder, and felt the floor tilt. 92,000. Not a rounding error. Not a payment plan.
Gone.
I was dressed and in a cab before the coffee cooled. John's office sat 3 floors above La Verità, behind a steel door that opened only to his print. I'd never been invited. I didn't wait for permission. The receptionist took one look at my face and buzzed me through. John was at the window, city sprawling beneath him like a circuit board. He wore black today, no jacket, shirt open at the throat, sleeves shoved high. Tattoos flexed when he turned. 92,000, I said. My voice cracked like thin ice. Explain. He didn't flinch. Good morning, Edith. Don't. I slammed the printed receipt on his desk. It fluttered like a white flag. You can't buy people, Mr. Moretti. A beat. Then, I don't buy. I own. The words landed soft, absolute. I laughed, sharp, incredulous. Timmy's life isn't collateral. Everything is collateral. He stepped closer, slow. Your landlord? The one who threatened eviction with a smirk? He's selling insurance in Queens now. Quiet suburb. No leverie. My stomach lurched. The bar manager, who doctor tips for attitude. Transferred to a warehouse in Jersey. Night shift. No contact with staff. I backed up until the desk edge bit my hips. Stop. The 3 men who followed you home last week, one with a knife, 2 with worse ideas, they won't follow anyone again. His voice stayed level, almost gentle. You think the world leaves good people untouched? I'm the reason you're still breathing. The room shrank. Air thickened. I saw it then, in the flicker behind his eyes, something raw, quickly shuddered. Loneliness like a bruise beneath the armor. My hands shook. You're rewriting my life without asking. I'm editing out the parts that would kill you. He closed the distance, close enough that I smelled cedar and gun oil. You want gratitude? Fine. You want truth? Here it is. I've watched you fight with broken weapons for years. I'm giving you steel. I wanted to scream. Wanted to slap him again, this time on purpose. Instead, my voice cracked open. I didn't ask to be your project. You didn't ask to be born poor either. Or to watch your brother waste away. Some debts aren't chosen. Silence pulsed between us, thick as velvet. I saw the boy he must have been, scar across his ribs from a childhood attempt he'd told me once, casual as weather. Saw the man who ordered deaths at 3 a.m. and bandaged my hand at midnight. The collision of gratitude and terror left me trembling. You scare me, I whispered. He didn't smile. Didn't touch me. Good, he said quietly. Fear means you still care what happens next. I turned and walked out before the tears fell. Behind me, the door closed with the soft finality of a coffin lid. The storm broke over the Hudson like the city itself had cracked open. I was still in the glass-walled conference room on the lounge's third floor, spreadsheets glowing blue on my laptop, when the first rumble rolled in. By the time I shut the computer, the sky had turned bruised purple and the windows rattled in their frames. John appeared in the doorway, coat over one arm. Roads are flooding. Stay. Not a question. His driver fought the downpour anyway, wipers slashing at sheets of water. Lightning strobed the skyline, turning Manhattan into a negative photograph. Halfway to Brooklyn, a fallen oak blocked the bridge approach. Sirens wailed behind us. John didn't curse. He simply turned the car around. The mansion crouched on the Palisades like a fortress that had forgotten it was beautiful, stone and glass, ivy clawing at the walls. I'd never seen it in daylight. Tonight the storm made it monstrous. Inside smelled of cedar and rain. A housekeeper took my soaked coat and vanished. John led me through corridors lit only by sconces and the occasional flash of lightning.
Dinner, he said.
Then you can decide if you still want to leave. The dining room was smaller than I expected, long table for 12, but only 2 places set at one end.
Candles again.
Rain lashed the floor-to-ceiling windows. We ate in near silence at first. Risotto with truffle, lambs so tender it dissolved. The storm did the talking, thunder growling, wind screaming through the eaves. He poured wine, deep red, almost black.
Ask, he said.
So I did. The questions I'd swallowed for weeks spilled out. The men in the river, the scar on his ribs, the boy who learned too early that love was a liability. He answered in fragments. First betrayal, age 9. My uncle put a bullet in my father's study wall to test loyalty. I was hiding under the desk. He unbuttoned his shirt slowly, revealing the pale, jagged line beneath his heart. Second betrayal, age 12. The bodyguard assigned to protect me sold the route to rivals. I was in the car. He wasn't. Lightning flared. Thunder followed instantly. The lights flickered. I reached without thinking, fingertips brushing the scar. His skin was fever warm. He didn't move. It's ugly, he said. It's proof you survived. My voice came out rough. His hand covered mine, pressing my palm flat against the mark. Survival is a habit. So is control. The air between us thickened, charged like the storm. He leaned in slow, deliberate. I felt the heat of his breath on my lips, the tremor in his restraint. Lightning cracked. The room plunged into absolute dark. When the emergency lights hummed on seconds later, we were still inches apart, breathing the same air. He pulled back first. I never meant to involve you, he said, voice raw. I laughed, shaky. Then why can't you let me go? His eyes searched mine, storm-dark and unguarded. Because you don't want to leave. The truth landed like a blade between ribs. I fled to the guest suite he indicated, 4-poster bed, silk sheets the color of midnight. Rain hammered the roof like fists. Sleep wouldn't come. At 3:12 a.m., I padded barefoot to the window. The storm had eased to a steady pour. The lawn glistened like oil. John stood on the terrace below, shirt soaked, face tilted to the sky. Lightning illuminated him in stark silhouette, alone, untouchable, unbreakable. I watched until he disappeared inside. Morning crept in gray and dripping. The mansion was quiet. Even the staff moved like ghosts. I found stationery in the desk, heavy cream stock, his monogram discreet in the corner. I wrote with a fountain pen that still smelled of his cologne. I need to remember who I was before you.
Asterisco asterisco. E asterisco asterisco.
I left it on the pillow, indentations still warm for my body. The front door was unlocked. His driver waited in the circular drive, engine idling. Miss Blake, he said, opening the rear door. Mr. Moretti asked me to take you wherever you need. I slid inside. The note burned in my pocket like a coal. As we pulled away, I caught a final glimpse in the side mirror. John on the top step, hair tousled by wind, watching the car disappear. He didn't stop me. But the gates closed behind us with the soft finality of a heartbeat. The note should have been the end of it. A clean incision. A door closed. Instead, it was the match struck in a room full of gasoline. 3 days of silence. I took the subway to the hospital every morning, sat with Timmy while he slept off chemo, and told myself the distance was healing. I wore the same jeans until the knees frayed, painted in the corner of my apartment with brushes I'd bought with my first honest paycheck in months. The canvas stayed blank. Every stroke felt like a lie. On the 4th night, I walked to the bodega for milk. The street was quiet, sodium lamps buzzing. I felt the prickle between my shoulder blades, someone watching, but when I turned, the block was empty. I never saw the van. Black, no plates, sliding door yawning like a mouth. A hand clamped over my face, chloroform, sharp and sweet. My scream died in cotton. The last thing I registered was the milk carton hitting pavement, white blooming across asphalt like surrender. Cold. Zip ties biting wrists. The hood over my head smelled of mildew and gasoline. I came to in a warehouse that stank of rust and river rot. Single bulb swinging overhead. My shoes were gone. The concrete leached heat through my socks.
2 men.
One lean, twitchy, cigarette trembling between nicotine fingers. The other built like a refrigerator, knuckles scarred and swollen. Moretti's little artist, Twitchy sneered. He'll come running. I tasted blood where I'd bitten my tongue. He won't. Refrigerator backhanded me, casual, almost bored. My head snapped sideways, stars exploding behind my eyes. They propped a phone on a crate. Live feed. Twitchy pressed record. Insurance policy, he said, and smashed the lens with the butt of his gun. Static hissed. Time dilated. Minutes or hours. I cataloged details the way John had taught me. Exit left, rusted chain, one guard dozing, the other pacing. My wrists were raw, but the zip tie had a weak spot where the plastic met the ratchet. I worked it against the chair's metal edge, slow, rhythmic. The phone buzzed. A single text flashed on screen before Twitchy snatched it. Warehouse 17. Pier 49. Come alone. Asterisk, asterisk. They laughed. He'll bring an army. No, Refrigerator said. He'll come for her. He came alone. The warehouse door rolled up with a shriek of metal. John stepped into the cone of light, black coat snapping in the draft, hands empty, face carved from winter. Let her go. His voice carried no echo. Twitchy leveled a pistol. Knees, Moretti, or she loses a finger. John knelt. The sight punched the air from my lungs. Refrigerator moved behind me, knife glinting. I felt the cold kiss of steel at my throat and surged upward, slamming the chair into his knees. The zip tie snapped. I drove my elbow into his solar plexus, grabbed the fallen knife, and slashed Twitchy's forearm as he swung toward me. Blood sprayed. The gun clattered. John was already moving. Not running, gliding. A blur of lethal economy. He caught Twitchy's wrist, twisted until bone cracked like kindling. The man screamed. John silenced him with a short, vicious jab to the throat. Refrigerator lunged. John sidestepped, used the man's momentum to drive his face into a steel beam.
Once. Twice.
The body dropped, twitching. Silence descended, broken only by my ragged breathing and the drip of blood on concrete. John cut my remaining ties with the same knife I'd stolen. His hands were steady. Mine shook so hard I couldn't grip the blade. Outside, sirens wailed, distant, too late. He half-carried me to the waiting SUV. The driver never looked back. The mansion again. Not the guest suite, his bedroom. Moonlight through rain-streaked glass painted silver bars across the floor. He sat me on the edge of the bed, knelt to check the cuts on my wrists. Antiseptic stung. I hissed. You came alone, I said. I always come alone. His voice was sandpaper. It's how they know I'm serious. I stared at the blood drying under his nails. Mine, theirs, impossible to tell. You killed them. They touched what's mine. The words should have terrified me. Instead, something inside me cracked open. Raw. Aching. I shoved him. Hard. You call this protection? He didn't budge. You'd be dead without me. Then maybe I'd be free. His hand snapped around my wrist, grip of iron, pulse thunder beneath skin. Next time, sweetheart, Think before you raise your hand. His voice dropped to a growl. You slapped the wrong man. The fight went out of me like air from a punctured lung. I was crying, ugly, furious tears. He pulled me against his chest, one arm banding my waist, the other tangling in my hair. I hit him again, fists against granite. He took every blow. Then my mouth found his. It wasn't gentle. Teeth clashed, tongues warred. Salt of tears and copper of blood. I tasted violence and apology, and the thing we'd both been circling for months. He backed me against the wall, hands sliding under my thighs to lift me. My legs locked around his waist. The kiss turned desperate, fury transmuting into need so sharp it cut. Lightning flickered outside, illuminating us in stark white, his shirt half unbuttoned, my nails raking down his back, the scar on his ribs hot beneath my palm. We broke apart gasping. Foreheads pressed together.
His voice was wrecked.
I never wanted you in the crossfire. You put me there the night I slapped you. And I'll burn the world to keep you breathing. I laughed, wet, broken. That's not love, John. No, he said against my mouth. It's obsession. And it's mutual. Another kiss, this one slower, deeper. Acclaiming. I felt the moment surrender became choice. Later, tangled in sheets that smelled of gunpowder and cedar, I traced the scar again. Tell me their names, I whispered. Doesn't matter. They're ash. Tell me anyway.
He did.
3 names. 3 lives erased in under 5 minutes. I listened until the sky outside turned the color of bruises. When dawn crept through the curtains, I was still awake. His arm was heavy across my waist, anchor and chain. I pressed my lips to the pulse in his throat. Love disguised as a threat. Violence disguised as devotion. I was in the cage, and the door had never been locked. The weeks bled into one another like watercolors left in the rain. Soft edges, colors running until I couldn't tell where I ended and the city began. I moved through La Verità with new skin. Floor manager. The title sat on my tongue like a foreign coin. Heavy, cold, impossible to swallow. My name was on the schedule in bold. My fingerprints opened the safes. My voice cut through the din when a VIP demanded the impossible. The staff noticed the change first. Casey's eyes widened when I walked in wearing a charcoal blazer tailored to my frame, hair twisted into a knot sharp enough to draw blood. You look, she started. Like I belong. I finished.
She didn't argue.
I learned the lounge's arteries, which ice machine jammed on Fridays, which bouncer took bribes in cash, and which in favors, which bottle of Macallan was watered down for the Russians who never noticed. I rewrote the seating chart to keep the Colombians 2 tables from the Albanians. I fired a bartender for skimming and hired his replacement before the night's first pour. John watched from the periphery. Not the shadows exactly. He owned the light. But he gave me the illusion of distance. A nod across the bar. A text at 2 a.m. Inventory short on Cristal. Fix it. Never a demand to see him. Never a touch. I told myself I preferred it that way. Timmy came home from the hospital on a Tuesday in early spring. The apartment still smelled of bleach and despair, but the stacks of bills were gone. I painted his room the color of storm clouds because he said it reminded him of the view from the mansion's terrace. He didn't ask how I'd paid for the new bed or the private nurse who came twice a week. Some mercies were better left unexamined. I visited him every Sunday. We played gin rummy on a tray table. He cheated shamelessly. I let him win. You're different, he said one afternoon, dealing cards with fingers still too thin. Harder around the eyes. Older, I corrected.
No.
Sharper. Like you finally learned the rules. I kissed his forehead and didn't answer. Nights at the lounge blurred into ritual. I wore black. Sheath dresses, blazers, boots with heels that could puncture a lung. My hands no longer shook when I balanced trays of $1,000 champagne. I smiled with teeth. The regulars tested me. A hedge fund prince grabbed my wrist one night, slurring about private rooms. I twisted free, pressed the broken stem of a wineglass to his carotid, and whispered the name of his mistress in Connecticut. He left a 5-figure tip and never returned. Word spread. Edith Blake was untouchable. The irony tasted like rust. John's absence became its own presence. I caught glimpses, his silhouette in the mezzanine booth, coat draped over the chair like a warning. The way security straightened when he passed. The hush that fell over the bar when his glass touched the counter. I told myself I didn't look for him.
Elite.
The first crack came on a Thursday in May. The lounge was packed, models draped over arms dealers, politicians toasting with oligarchs. I was in the back office reconciling the night's take when the door opened without a knock. John stood in the threshold, tie loosened, sleeves rolled high. The scar on his forearm caught the desk lamp, pale lightning against ink. "You're short on the beluga count," he said. "I know." My voice didn't waver. "The distributor's playing games. I'm handling it." He studied me for a long moment. "You're good at this." I learned from the best. Something flickered across his face. Pride, maybe. Or pain. He left without another word. The second crack came 2 weeks later. A new server, young, nervous, spilled a tray of Negronis on a senator's wife. The woman shrieked. I fired the girl on the spot. John found me in the alley an hour later, smoking a cigarette I didn't want. "She has a kid," he said. "She cost us 20 grand in comped bottles. She's 19. I took a drag. Mercy's a luxury we can't afford. He plucked the cigarette from my fingers, crushed it under his boot. "You sound like me. Maybe I am you." He didn't touch me, but the space between us hummed like a live wire. The third crack was quieter. I found a single black rose on my desk at 4 a.m. No note, just the flower, thorns intact. I pressed it between the pages of the ledger, like a press sin. Summer arrived sticky and relentless. The lounge installed new chandeliers, crystal that caught the light and threw it back like shrapnel. I wore sunglasses indoors to hide the shadows under my eyes. Timmy's hair started growing back, soft, dark curls. He asked for a dog. I promised him one when he hit remission. I kept the promise in a maybe. The final night came without warning. A Thursday again. The lounge was closed for a private event, John's birthday, though no one dared say it aloud. The guest list was 30 names long, and every one of them could buy a small country. I wore red, not the borrowed dress from months ago. This was silk, backless, the color of fresh blood. It clung like a second skin. I circulated with a smile sharp enough to cut glass.
Poured. Laughed.
Counted exits. John was at the far end of the bar, surrounded by men in bespoke suits who laughed too loud and watched too carefully. He wore black, as always. His eyes found mine across the room and held. At 1:47 a.m. the crowd thinned. I slipped into the private dining room to check the dessert station. The door closed behind me with a soft click. John was already there. 2 glasses on the table. 1 pour of something amber and expensive. "Sit," he said. I stayed standing. "It's your birthday." "Technically tomorrow." He lifted the glass, offered it. Macallan, 1946. Older than both of us. I took it. The liquor burned a path to my stomach. "You're free to go, Edith." The words hung in the air like smoke. I set the glass down untouched. "Am I?" He didn't answer. I stepped closer. The red dress whispered against my thighs. "You gave me a job, a title, a life. And every night I walk out those doors knowing your car is 2 blocks away. Your men on the corner. Your name on my tongue like a prayer I never learned."
His jaw tightened.
I kept my distance. You kept me in orbit. Silence stretched, taut as a wire. I reached for him first. My fingers brushed the scar on his cheek, the one I'd put there with a slap months ago. It had faded to silver. He caught my wrist, held it there. "You hate me. I hate what you made me." "And what's that?" "Yours." The kiss was slow, not the frantic clash of the warehouse night. This was deliberate, lips brushing, testing, then claiming. His hand slid to the small of my back, pulling me flush against him. I felt the tremor in his fingers, the only crack in the armor. I tasted whiskey and regret. He tasted surrender. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. I never wanted you to see the blood, he whispered. I bathed in it. Another kiss, softer, sadder. I pulled away first. The red dress pooled at my feet like spilled wine. I stepped out of it, left it on the floor like shed skin. He watched me dress in silence. The black blazer, the boots, the armor I'd built brick by brick. At the door I paused. The girl I fired, I said. Give her the server position in the Hampton house. She'll be safe there. He nodded once. I walked through the lounge, one last time. The chandeliers glittered like broken promises. The staff averted their eyes, not out of fear, but respect. Outside, the night was warm. No car waited.
No sa doustral me.
I took the subway home. The city blurred past in streaks of neon and exhaust. I pressed my palm to the window and felt the vibration of 1,000 lives I'd never live. Timmy was asleep when I let myself in. I stood in his doorway and watched the rise and fall of his chest. The dog barked once in a dream. I painted until dawn. Not the blank canvas from weeks ago. This one was violent. Reds and blacks. A slash of gold where light met shadow. In the center, two figures locked in an embrace that could have been love or strangulation. I signed it in the corner, EB. The next morning I quit. Left the keys on John's desk with a single black rose beside them. No note. He didn't stop me. I took a job at a gallery in Chelsea. Small, honest, smelling of turpentine and coffee. The pay was shit. The hours were worse. Timmy got his dog, a mutt from the shelter with one blue eye and a limp. We named him Lucky. Some nights I walked past La Verità. The lights were still gold. The music still throbbed. I never went in, but I kept the scar on my palm, the one from the warehouse glass. It had healed white and raised. A reminder. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the slap, I found a package on my doorstep. Plain brown paper. No return address. Inside, a single bottle of Macallan 1946, and a card in his handwriting. Some mistakes are worth making. I opened the bottle, poured 2 fingers into a chipped mug, drank it slow. The city hummed outside my window. Alive, dangerous, magnetic. I didn't call the number I still knew by heart. I didn't need to, because some cages aren't made of bars. They're made of want. And I'd built mine brick by brick with my own 2 hands. If I'd known who he really was, I'd have broken my own wrist before I ever laid a hand on him. But some mistakes are worth making. The city lights flickered beyond my window, casting long shadows across the half-finished canvas on my easel. The Macallan bottle sat empty on the counter, its amber ghost lingering in the glass. Lucky snored softly at my feet, his mismatched eyes twitching in some dream of open fields. Timmy's laughter echoed from the next room. He was beating the nurse at gin rummy again. Life had settled into a rhythm. Honest, quiet mine.
But the scar on my palm itched.
And the black rose I'd pressed between ledger pages years ago still held its shape, thorns and all. I opened my phone. The number was still there, unsaved, unblocked. My thumb hovered. Some mistakes are worth making. Some cages are chosen. The story doesn't end in silence. Edith's next move is in your hands. Will she call? Will she burn the number? Or will she walk back into the gold-lit dark, knowing exactly who waits there? If you enjoyed the story, like, subscribe, and share with others so they can learn too. See you in our next video.